Okay, we are recording. I am with Paul. Paul, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I mean, well, I guess friend is a bit of an overstatement, right? This is
That's okay.
I mean, I think we sat
We've
beside
met.
each other on a bus at Bruce's event. If I'm not mistaken, that was like the extent of our relationship, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I feel like you're a friend because
Every
people talk about you all the
I
time.
think that Bitcoin is actually kind of it's like a very traumatic war in a way. And everyone is like going through all this. It's a tremendously alienating thing. So, because many of your friends and family like don't get it and they have never gotten it and they definitely didn't get it back in whenever when you
So true.
explained it to them, and now they don't really know how to think of you, and no one really knows like what you're going through except for the other Bitcoiners. So I do think that there is a kind of, Bitcoin PTSD or Bitcoin gang or something that binds us all together.
Okay, well, yeah, I can get down with that one because I do have a tendency of starting with that, and I just feel like, yeah, even I mean, you I have known for years, but even people like I'll meet someone just like last week, and they'll tell me about their Bitcoin project and how they're building a self custody wallet with Lightning and this and that. I'll be like brothers from different mothers. Let's go, let's do this. So okay, we wanted to switch it up today, right? Normally I start with people's story, but I guess we're gonna kind of do the reciprocal of that today. So we're gonna start with my last question first. So it doesn't matter what your name is, who you are, what your story is to start with. Let's start first with what is a asymmetrical truth? What is some truth that you hold that most other Bitcoiners or people in Bitcoin would disagree with you on?
Okay. Yeah. Well, see, I think people they should be able to get to know me first, and then they decide whether or not they care about the story. But so the one that it's tangentially related to Bitcoin, but in general, the answer to that question of just and with respect to everything is that probably a lot of the people you love will die because election gambling is frowned upon in American culture. So that is this weird screwball belief that I have. And
Whoa,
most
well, you got
people
to
have no
rewind and
idea.
you got to
Most
hit
people
me
have
with that
no
one
idea
again.
what I'm even talking about.
You got to hit me with
Yeah,
that way. Wait, hold on. Wait, what? Say that again. I
yeah,
kind of caught it.
yeah. So I'm a big believer in this prediction markets concept, but the excitement that most Bitcoiners and libertarians have for it only scratches the surface of the tremendous potential this institution has to just fix. I don't really want to say fix everything, but it can fix a certain type of problem, which is the who watches the watchman problem. So, like, you can imagine a pyramid in your mind where, like, the CEO is at the top, or the Congress people are at the top, or the editor in chief if you're from academia, like I'm from academia. The editor in chief of some journal is at the top, and then there's senior academics with prestige, and then it filters down, and at the bottom you have research assistants, or you have like whatever staff, janitors, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
all these other people, and this produces some outcome. And the people, when you have subordinates, you have a lot of control over them. You monitor them. If you're happy with their work, you promote them or reward them. But if you're not happy, you can fire them. And people don't want to be fired, so they work hard. They work hard enough. They at least there's some feedback for laziness. They get kicked out if they're too lazy. But what about the people at the top? What keeps them accountable? And the answer right now is not very much. I mean, the CEO is accountable to the stock price, but it's very, very difficult. The CEOs, they're working every day. They're 24/7.
Mm.
Their brain is inside the company, and they're touching everything. Everything that the company is, they have a hand in. And how can you possibly even begin to understand, like second guess their choice? Like you can say, well, the stock price would have been high. The stock price of Tesla would have been higher if Elon Musk did this or didn't do this or whatever. You have no idea. The board of directors is theoretically in charge of the CEO. They could fire the CEO, but those are some people that meet like four times a year. What are they going to do? They have no idea if Elon Musk is doing the right thing or not. Often the chairman of the board is the CEO's friends. This is a million times worse in the because a corporation is ultimately accountable to bankruptcy, to sales, and to bankruptcy. So if the corporation doesn't do well, the company eventually goes out of business. You know, but in political world, it's even worse because the best you can hope for is a change of party, leadership from, Republican to Democrat in the United States. And it's much worse in Europe when there's like they have a proportional representation, or you can barely ever get anything changed.
Wait, hold on, but I want to go back to your first sentence of what we just said, which was what you said something along the line. Oh, yeah, repeat what you said, and like I want to figure that out. Huh?
Many of the people you love will die because economic growth and medical research and such will be what it is. Even things like mental health or whatever, everything will just be better. The prediction market institution has the ability to completely reform the way these people at the top are held accountable to some kind of tangible result. And so the potential for improvement is almost unlimited. I mean, the things that the US government currently does that holds back economic growth. I mean, free trade is just one thing. Free trade would be like free, and someone has calculated that the return on investment for that, or the gains of trade from that, would be like something like an 11 million% ROI. I could look to find this study, but it's a silly thing. The benefits would be extreme. The cost is nothing. That's just one thing, of many. But the kind of laziness and the kind of political games that people play, both within the corporation and in civic political life, that's all something that you could really stamp out almost completely with this one institution that we would have had naturally by itself. It's very old. It's as old as the hills. You can track, people would bet on who would be elected Pope since like the 1300s, 1200 AD. There's all this. And of course, in the UK, they bet on everything just for fun. But the US is this super important, super Puritan place, and it hates gambling, and it hates the CFTC has written, despite, there's been like multiple papers there's like one called The Power of Prediction Markets. It's signed by like 30 people, including multiple Nobel Prize winners, arguing for deregulation of this institution, but it's regulated just out of existence. You are not allowed to even do this. It took forever to get like the special exemption in this one university. So people could bet like $500 maximum per person, which is not enough. All this stuff could be fixed. Even things like Fed policy or whatever you want to do, you could do it better with a prediction market.
How?
And we would have had it
Why?
accidentally.
Why? How does a prediction market fix all of this?
Because the potential is untapped. So most people have only heard of like this one thing where it's like you win $1 if Donald Trump is reelected, or you win a different dollar if Joe Biden is elected. And you have these two things, and one of those two is going to be elected. So they trade in a marketplace, and they trade, maybe the Donald Trump shares were 30 cents on the dollar, and the Biden shares were 70 cents on the dollar. This would indicate that Trump has a 30% chance of winning, Biden has a 70% chance of winning. And so that's what people are used to. Even that, people have a big problem concluding that this represents some kind of objective knowledge. And that if people knew somehow that Biden would win, they would all sell the Trump shares for 30 cents because they're imminently worth zero. They buy the Biden shares for 70 cents. They're imminently worth $1. So they can get a huge ROI in a few days, 70 cents to $1. But this idea, the idea of just aggregating all the information on one topic, like even something like what will the global average surface temperature be next year as reported by this NASA satellite, like if you wanted to do a global warming type thing. Global warming is this abstract, nebulous thing, whereas you can make it concrete with some measurement. You say, here's a satellite. It's going to measure this thing. Now, maybe you don't care about the satellite, or maybe you don't care about how NASA calculates surface temperature abnormality. But you see, then the conversation can at least make progress. You can say, well, I have a problem with this satellite. And they say, fine, what about this other satellite? Or what about 20 satellites? We'll average them together. Or what about some other thing we'll do? We'll take the National Weather Service from every country or whatever. The conversation will make progress. But most disputes really aren't about anything. They're just about, who gets respect from whom. And they're this petty kind of monkey politics. from the Stone Age that we can't shake off. But in many other domains, we just shake it off. Like when you're trying to install plumbing in your house or accomplish any normal task, you just say, well, does it work yet? And you just keep changing it until it works. But we haven't been able to shake all this politicking off. But this is just narrowly with one dimension. You just say, okay, I'm just going to measure what is the surface temperature going to be next year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. You can say, this is going to pay 1 cent for every surface temperature abnormality in the year 2030 or something. And then, you have to calculate time value of money a little bit. It's a little confusing, and opportunity costs if you had invested in the stock market. But basically, if that number starts going up all of a sudden, it means that people think that the global surface temperature is going to be warmer. So it kind of just ends this dispute. But if it plummets or stays the same, then people think it won't be much warmer, and so the problem isn't as big of a deal. Now, the issue, though, is this is just with one dimension, and when you change this from one dimension to several dimensions, you solve a lot of problems. So a lot of people will say something like, sure, we won't have a lot of the global surface temperature abnormality in the future will be low. The problem will be solved, but that's only because we'll do something about it. We'll pass whatever, the carbon plan or whatever it is. So it doesn't actually solve any problems. Or people will say stuff like, sure, Hillary Clinton is trading this. People said this to me 4 years ago. They say Hillary Clinton is trading really high. That's just because, she's so evil and sorceress that she's going to win, and there's nothing we can do about it. It doesn't say anything about whether or not who should win or something like that. But you can break this up. This is my mission to try to bring this to the world. Is you have, instead of having yes and no, which is just two questions, and there's just one question, like basically, will the Republican win, yes or no? And having Trump be 30 cents and Biden be 70 cents, you can break it up into lots of other things. So you can say, will the unemployment rate be low? Will we have a good economy? Just to make it super oversimplified. It's like, will the Republican win? Will the economy be good? You have 4 states. One pays if the Republican wins and the economy is good. One pays if the Republican wins and the economy is bad. One pays if the Democrat wins and the economy is good. One pays if the Democrat wins and the economy is bad. And from there, you can do all kinds of, addition, subtraction, multiplication. You get everything you got before, but you get also this relationship. If the numbers clump up on a line, all the Republican winning, economy good numbers over there, and the economy bad, Republican losing numbers, if they clump up on a line, it shows that they are related statistically. It gives you advice. It says, if I vote Republican, the economy will be better, or vice versa. So it's, if we do this climate plan, the temperature will be different. If we do this business maneuver, the stock price will go up. If Tesla does this, discontinues the Cybertruck or doubles down on the Cybertruck or whatever it is.
Hey, Paul, I have a question. Okay, so this is
so
this is
now
like,
with that, you hold the leader accountable. That's the point.
this
So
is
the leaders should be as accountable as Uber drivers, where you get rated 5 stars every time, you get constant feedback. They should be working really hard, and they should be punished for inefficiency the same way as everyone else should. When you go to work, you should be giving it your all. You should be improving every day, and it should be difficult. But then, when you go home, you should get a lot of money also. And we should all live in a rich economy full of awesome stuff that everyone wants that's cheap and high quality.
okay.
Yeah, I know that was kind of
So
hard.
this is about prediction markets, right? So it's about
Yes.
predicting the future, right? Which is obviously interesting and fascinating. And so my first question is that why is this seen as gambling, or why is it illegal in some countries? Like that's my first question. I mean,
it just
why?
looks a lot
Like, I
like
mean, if
gambling.
people aren't, you're not hurting anyone. Like, if you
I
and some
know.
other dude
I know.
want to,
Well, we and anyone who's libertarian has been like,
oh, okay,
they've
so
been
that's
trying that for a long time, right? They've been like, what's the first? It's like if it neither breaks my arm nor picks my pocket or something.
right. I mean,
This is
yeah,
the struggle. Yes, this is the struggle of all people. I mean, over time, I think against against
Tyranny?
tyranny, collectivism,
No, but why? What was, I mean, must have been
stigma.
something that happened or something went
Over
wrong.
time,
Is it like, but I'm just trying to think,
some
like, how
things
do they
have gone wrong. Yeah,
conflate?
there's a long history, but
Oh,
as I
okay.
said, there is a long history of actually doing the betting. Um, People have been betting, and on who will win the
UFC
election for
fights.
Pope and all these other things for hundreds of years.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying,
And
but people
people have
do
bet.
bet today even,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, I mean, I don't bet,
yeah.
but like people go on websites all the
But
time.
there's been a long trend, like a long time ago, there was life insurance was seen as immoral. That was seen as betting that your spouse would die. So it was seen as very irresponsible, and it like interfered with the church. This was back in the
Interesting.
day when
Mm.
everyone in America was like lived in a little farm church community. If your spouse died, the church, the community would take care of you. So there was like suspicious, it competed with the other institutions of the day. But it is kind of weird, right? And even there is an idea, there's even a kind of trope of the gold digger spouse killing the person like for the life insurance money or something. The guy takes our life insurance policy, big life insurance policy, and then he disappears in a boating accident or something. Um,
Oh, dude, I know all about. I used to sell life insurance. I know all about it, like 20
so it
years
used to
ago.
be considered immoral, but now it's not at all. Now it's if you have a family, it's considered quite bizarre to go without
Mm.
life insurance. In fact,
Mm.
it's flipped completely. All kinds of stuff. The stock market used to be seen as gambling. There used to be a phrase, "Gentlemen don't trade puts," which is truly absurd. This was about Chicago Board of Options. This is like Chicago was like in the middle of all these farms.
Mm.
These people did all this banking in America with the Mississippi River and blah blah blah, and so they had to. There was all the seasonal variation. There was all this risk. So they got big into insurance, and they got big into like trading futures for crops and things. And this is like Chicago got big. And like I don't know exactly when this would be, like Gilded Era, late 1850 to 1900, I guess. I don't remember the exact dates, but Chicago started all this stuff up, became this big financial center. Um, and but there was this phrase that you weren't supposed to trade puts. Put is when you bet a call option makes money if the thing goes up in price. A put option makes money if the thing goes down. So a put is kind of insurance. But there was this stigma. It was like seen as wrong, even though it's laughable if you think about it for 2 seconds. I mean, think about it in international forex. Like, what if you're trading like the British pounds per yen rate, but you live in America? It's like, which one is even a put and which one is even a call? It like makes absolutely no difference.
But
It
that's
doesn't even
my
make any
point.
sense.
That was my next
But
question is like futures and all that stuff. Isn't that betting on the future to some extent?
yes, well, see,
So then why is that
there's
allowed,
almost
but then you're
no
not
action
allowed?
that we take. Every action you take has some sort of, if you walk to the post office, you're betting that the post office will be open when you get there. It's like
So no,
so
so
there's
where's
no.
that line? I'm not gonna
But
lie.
that's my
I've
point.
always stayed
This is
away
my
from
point. There,
gambling or even betting on these types of things because in my brain I couldn't figure out like where does the world like where is it like where are you
right.
allowed? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like it's
Well,
so funny.
okay.
It's like people aren't allowed to play games. Like games
Well,
bad.
the issue is, there's a big difference. So if you go to like a casino, the odds are fixed and they're not in your favor. So something's up, because
Yeah,
everything is a negative expected value. So
but that's
why
cool.
is anyone there?
Wait,
Somebody else
lottery,
allowed. Yeah,
a
the lottery.
lottery.
The state in the United States, the state runs a lottery.
Like what is going
It
on right
doesn't make
now?
any sense at all. It's just a mistake, is what I'm saying. It's no different than with the life insurance and with the stock market. But
Oh,
the stock market is important. I mean, life insurance is important because you should be able to provide for your family if you die, and it shouldn't depend on how popular you are, with your friends. That's uncivilized and barbaric, And plus, what's the guy who gets there first? Like, and he hasn't had an opportunity to get standing in the community, but his actuarial risk is the same. Why should he suffer in a world with no life insurance? But similarly, capital markets, if you have a great business idea, should you have to work as a waiter or whatever for like 30 years and save up all the money to finally start that idea? Meanwhile, down the street, there's some rich retired person who wants a better return on their, they want to turn their money into more money. Why can't the two of you just link up? They can be the investor in your business. You can start it tomorrow.
Hmm.
That's the point of having free capital markets. And all that stuff about puts, that was just like, I don't know what that was. Maybe there was some reason for it that makes some kind of sophisticated sense, like a Nassim Taleb like reason that we don't completely understand in our modern culture. But when you can't, when you can short, when you can bet on things going down, that is healthy. Part of the problem with the U.S. housing market is you cannot short it. So when the prices go up, everyone starts buying, and they'll become house flippers. But there's no way to short. So once you think there's a bubble, this is before all that stuff, that Michael Burry like mortgage-backed security stuff. There was you can't like short your neighbor's house. You can't even take out like homeowners insurance. You have to have like what they call an insurable interest. But you can't bet that the houses around you will go down in price. If you could, it probably would pop the bubble before it really got going. So you would probably be, if you can short things, it's bubble suppression technology. It smooths out all these cycles, and it stops them from becoming really euphoric. Is when they become super irrational, and then they start to do a lot of damage, because then they have that extra momentum to just go crazy, and then it's super crash back down.
Yeah.
So the thing about gentlemen don't trade puts, that was like absurd on its face. The whole thing has been absurd. What we should just have is liberalism. People allowed to just do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't harm a third party, which this absolutely does not.
Yeah, right. Okay. So okay.
So this is just the next stage. But what I'm trying to impress on people is that your life will be so much better eventually. I don't know if it'll take 100 years, but eventually it will reach something like this. And of course, they're going to look back and they're going to say, "Look at these stupid debates that these people would do. This is what a joke this was." 30 seconds for your healthcare policy and 60 seconds on whatever national defense. In the future, people will just publish a lot of stuff. It'll be evaluated by experts the same way hedge funds evaluate companies, and they'll just battle it out in the markets on who will have the best GDP growth, who will have the best unemployment rate, who will have the fewest deaths in the country, or who will have the longest life expectancy or education or anything else you can measure. They'll just battle it out in these markets. The voters will show up on election day. They'll see everyone's numbers. It'll be like getting a menu in a restaurant. You don't have to know anything about how they make whatever it is, the tiramisu. They just see, this is exactly what you'll get. This is the cost. This is exactly how much money the government will spend. And then they'll just go in and they'll still get to choose one party over another, but they'll have all this great information. And if anyone is super irrational, if any party is known, it has nothing to do with what they say. If it's known that if they are elected, they will behave irrationally, their numbers will be worse before they even have the opportunity to be elected. So they'll know on election day to avoid whichever party that is. So life would be totally different. You won't have any of this about, and then of course these people are all professional manipulators. They have all these psychologists they hire and these pollsters, the social media algorithms. They have all this stuff designed to get into your brain with this emotional stuff about like like how you need to vote for this person, otherwise it's the end of your culture, it's the end of the world. Those people are coming, the poor people, the immigrants or whatever, the Jews, they're coming to destroy society, and you have to do XYZ, or it's like you have to vote for this party because it's the only one that will be compassionate to this marginalized group, and only if you don't vote for this party, it's just because you're racist or homophobic or whatever. Not all of that is just because they're trying to buy election results with advertising and polling. They do all this stuff. They know everyone they've got everything down to a science. They know all the neighborhoods. They know who's the single issue voter on gun control. They send them the gun control thing. The neighbor gets a completely different thing. They get a thing about LGBT rights. They know everything. The pollsters, they got everyone's credit card data. They got everything. So they're manipulating people into voting a certain way. And as we know, one way is through logic and reason, but that is expensive and not as reliable as all the cheap shots. So you have all this stuff about a father and son not talking to each other because one of them is a Trump supporter or something. All of that would go away in my fantasy world. This would be a boring thing like I don't know, it'd be like Crest versus Colgate. You go to CVS and you want to buy toothpaste. Both of them a high quality product, both at a good price. If you decide you're tired of one, you just switch to the other. But since the free market is there, you can't, it's like you go in now, it's like you go in to buy toothpaste and it's like Crest is like $40,000 and gives you like brain cancer immediately, and Colgate is like $55,000 and you die slowly of sepsis or something. It's like, so these are like two horrible products and they don't improve. But if you just had this mechanism to punish the people who make it worse, then it would just get better over time as rapidly as possible. So that's my quirky thing. And not a lot of people agree with me, as you can imagine. It's not so much that people disagree. They just people don't, they don't know what to say to this.
I want to make it a little bit like, let's use an example. Okay. So for example, when Trump came down the elevator, I'm not even American, right? So it doesn't I can't really vote or anything, but when he came down the elevator, I was like, I think within 2 days, I was like, this man is the future president of the United States. Like, definitely, like 100%. I've met enough Americans to know that this man is the future American president. And my dad literally stopped talking to me. So how does how does your world and he did, because he didn't believe that, and he thought Trump was I think 1 week he was like, this guy is gonna beat him, and then no, now it's gonna be that guy, and one by one they all fell off and then Trump won. But I mean, but I'm just curious. So so how you would prevented that in your world?
It's a mixture of a lot of things. I think it's my diagnosis of why that happened to you and why it happens to everyone else is a mixture of things, but I think all of them would be solved. Maybe not all of them. We have an instinct to, pick leaders and project ourselves into them. So if people have different leaders, then this is fine. But the issue is, why does it matter? There's a lot of issues. Like, will he win? Like, I had friends like that too. I was at bar trivia with my friends and they said there's no way that Trump can win. And I said, well, in the betting markets, he has like a 30% chance of winning. But people don't even know what to say to that, because they're used to a certain script where you just think your guy is going to win. You can't see it any other way. The idea of even of putting percentage points on it is foreign to people. But people couldn't believe that he had 30%, and then that was in 2016. He did, and then he won. So it's like that. So a part of it would be self-awareness that you don't know everything. And it's like, why would you comment on, what if you wanted to comment on something like Tesla? That's your right. You could say, there's no way Tesla is going to sell more than 20,000 cars of this type in a certain month. But you see, it's like, who cares? Either that will happen or it won't. There's no, people use politics as like a kind of stage so they can perform. They can show parts of themselves to their friends, their allies. So that's part of it. But I would strip all that away and I would make it this dry, boring thing. You wouldn't even need to know. The politicians wouldn't even need to campaign. They just put out their stuff. They wouldn't even need to put out their stuff because the market, it's like a CEO. It's like when you interview a CEO for a job, you don't necessarily need to interview them. If you somehow secretly knew that they would be the best, in my world, you can make your little trades so that if they're chosen and they do a good job, you make a ton of money. But if they're not chosen, then you also make money. You can start, or you get a refund, so you lose nothing. And if the only way you lose money is if they are chosen and they do badly, so you can set up this trade. So the only way you lose money is if they're chosen to be the leader and they do a bad job. So then you can just without even talking to them at all, just if you somehow knew God visits you in a dream and lets you in on a secret, by the way, this is the most qualified person. You don't even need to they don't even need to campaign or anything. So, and this is for CEO or for president or for whatever. So it would just be less salient in the culture in general. That's one thing.
Wait,
But another thing though is that just if you would just have a percent, that's what I'm saying. You'd be saying this guy's going to win, and your father would be saying no, he won't. But somewhere there would be 1% that some percentage value that's the same for both of you, and neither of you really have any basis for disputing it. Just like the Tesla car sales in a certain month figure, it's like there's a projection. You don't really know. You're not really a specialist. A lot of people, they know what their friends think. Do they know? Do they even know that only 10 or by some count 8 states matter because those are the only 8 swing states? Do they know that there are only so many persuadable voters in those swing states? Do they know what those people want? A lot of people, I have friends from Connecticut or friends in California. Those are both blue states. It doesn't matter what anyone in those states think, at all to who's going to be elected president. And many of those people can't name they can't even name the senators or representatives in their own state.
So you're talking about a future where like people's ideas and thoughts are like are measured over time, and whether they're. Have you ever heard of Ray Dalio? Have you ever heard of like how he runs his like hedge fund?
I actually interviewed at Bridgewater.
Interesting. No, because I read his book, and it just strikes me as like something that.
Yeah, he gives it away to people who interview, not him personally. But
the book?
They give it to you if you come there. Yeah.
Well, I bought it myself, but I'm just saying is like I found a lot of what so this whole idea of what was that he has this tool that he uses, I forget what it's called.
Just radical criticism. And
well,
everything, and they just everything is scrutinized.
Well, scrutinized. But what I found really fascinating about it is he has literally this tool that in real time, as he's hosting, let's say, a meeting with 100 of his employees, they're able to give him
say this sucks,
be like this sucks, this is right, this is wrong, or whatever. And in the back, this matrix system is tabulating. Paul,
it'd be like this prediction markets. It'd be like if you're watching an NFL game and there's like a score and you see how much points are they likely to get, and the guy throws an interception and the numbers just
in real time
immediately.
Yeah. And he talks about this world where, I mean, this company that he's built, where he's essentially like I said, you have a weight, and it measures over time how accurate you are. So if 9 out of 10 things you've always said is always like accurate, like you said, this is going to have Bitcoin price is going to go up, and it does. And you said this and this and this, they have like this way to actually kind of quantify this.
Markets improve on that, but this is a similar thing. He's obviously trying to hold himself accountable the same way I think every CEO should be held accountable, which is like all the time and for everything. So
for everything, for every word, not just did I get it marginally right?
I'm not asking any more of them than they would ask for their own employees. So I don't want everyone to be like, enslaved to this system where they have to work super hard. We want to live in a world where when you go to work, you work hard and you try to be the best at what you do every day. That's what's best for everyone. And
yes.
Work is more fun, I think. But even if it's not, even if that ends up being horrible, we would live in an economy where every single good and service would be such a high quality. Think about it. It would be done by someone who, not only them, but all of their bosses, up to the CEO, is working as hard as possible to make it cheap and high quality for you. So every single thing would be like dirt cheap and just super great. So that's what we want. We want a world where when you're at work, you work, and then when you go home, you have the most fun in the world, and you can take the best vacations. Yeah, people can have like 12 weeks of vacation a year or whatever it is. But when you're at work, you should be a killer. You should be the best at whatever it is you do. But Ray Dalio's thing, I mean, that is that idea of past performance informing future results. That is called induction, and that has haunted people who study this type of thing. Epistemology, like what is true, how do we know what will happen in the future, what does it mean to know that you know what will happen in the future versus being deluded. That's not a great prediction markets are actually better than that, because with prediction markets you know yourself. So you say, I know I got 99 out of the last 100 things wrong, but I know exactly why. Every time I know why. It was because of such and such. But now the 100th time I know that I know that I'm going to get it right. Now with prediction market world, you can like mortgage your house. You can do like what people did with Bitcoin and just bet it all on that one thing because now you know that you're right. Before you weren't really sure. Maybe you only bet $20 each time. See, so you have you can impose your own confidence. You have your own self-assessment. You self-select. So you say, I don't know anything about, I don't know anything about if what frozen concentrated orange juice futures are going to do tomorrow. I don't know about anything about what Tesla is going to do tomorrow, really. I mean, I have an opinion like every other person, but I don't know, So why I'm not going to bet on the share price, but I'm going to bet on something that I know about. And if I know something that other people don't know, now I'm going to bet big. But mostly I just bet nothing. So I don't know. So I think that's an improvement over that scheme that you outlined, where people are just solicited for opinions like at random, and then they're assessed based on the performance, historical performance.
Paul, okay, wow, we just did an hour-long introduction to the or whatever my question that normally only takes a few minutes, but this is super fascinating. I think I'm going to start doing this more often. Okay, but I have a question.
But I have a different one
I
in
don't even know
Bitcoin
where to
because
go.
it's the thing that you agree that you believe that most people don't. And in Bitcoin, it would be
Yeah,
my project drive chain, and that it's
can you talk about that a little bit?
yeah. Well,
Can you talk about drive
the
chain?
origin of drive chain is because I have this other the prediction market project that was called Truth Coins, now called Bitcoin Hive Mind. And you can go to bitcoinhivemind.com and have a cool little video there about this futarchy thing that's only 20 minutes that I gave at an Acapulco, 2019, I think, that people could watch if they want to hear more about whatever that was. But that was software that I wrote this paper about in 2014, early 2014. And then I wanted this is like a blockchain peer-to-peer Oracle software. So it would figure out whether or not Trump won or not, and then it would pay out people the right way. And it would also do all the market stuff, and it would do all this multidimensional stuff that I wanted as well. So it would do everything. This is this design, and so then I worked. It's a long story, but I produced the software in 2015 as its own kind of blockchain, but I didn't want it to be an altcoin, and Blockstream was getting really big with the sidechains idea at the time. So I thought the Blockstream would come out with some kind of sidechains thing that I could use to bolt it onto Bitcoin. This was a long time ago. But then in late 2015, it became obvious that Blockstream had kind of given up on this original idea of the sidechain, which was this solution to the problem of altcoins. There was all this stuff coming out, Ethereum, BitShares, you probably remember. There was other stuff like Counterparty that was like sort of on Bitcoin, but it's on blockchain, so weird other things. So all this stuff was coming out, and it wasn't all obviously super fraudulent. Like in the ancient times, you had like Bitcoin, then you had the second blockchain actually was Namecoin, which is a great idea. And it still is a good idea, but it hasn't quite found its it would be better as a sidechain, first of all. But second of all, it has some other complexities that it hasn't quite worked through yet, but that has tremendous potential. I mean, with something like Namecoin, you could have one login for every single site, including sites that don't exist yet. So you have Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, it would all just be the same account tied to the same name. You could have age, so you wouldn't need to worry about being impersonated. You wouldn't need to tell people, here's my Instagram, here's my whatever, like in a big multi-giant paragraph. So that's a separate story. What I really wanted to get at is Litecoin was the first like truly offensive altcoin where it was just this copy paste. Bitcoin does all this work to go from zero to like the super cool thing. And then Litecoin like copies and pastes it, and it's like, yeah, look at me, I'm also great. And that's
It'll
just
change
like
3 parameters or something
yeah,
like that.
exactly. Right. Yeah, the block time. Yeah. So that was like kind of offensively. That was like, it was not only kind of a stupid idea, but it was like just so brazen and sort of absurd. And then there was a lot of like terrible altcoins after that, but they started to get some that could have had some kind of plausibility to them. And in fact, with Counterparty, we had stuff like Mastercoin and Counterparty early on. They were kind of weird, but they were onto something, which was what later became the ICO. And the ICO is terrible. Like, I think so far, basically every ICO has been like a total scam and a terrible idea. But in principle, the idea of the ICO is, like, it should be allowed, and it should be on Bitcoin, because Bitcoin should just do anything the customer wants. Bitcoin should be there, ready to go. It should also be ready to go if you want small blocks and you don't want junk in the blockchain. So, but that, Bitcoin should be doing everything that everyone wants, but including the people who want a very conservative version of Bitcoin. So this is kind of where this is all going, which is the sidechains idea was people want different things. We'll just let them all have their own software and they'll all be interoperable. Same 21 million Bitcoins, but weird. If you want their weird Dan Larimer project of the week, or if you want Ethereum, that was supposed to be RSK, rootstock. That started like in 2015. So that was the point of that. And so I had reached a point where I had finished Bitcoin Hive Mind, the prediction markets project, but there was no sidechains technology to bolt it into Bitcoin Core. So I kind of threw out my own idea in November of 2015, which was Drive Chain. And then in 2016, I kind of like fleshed it out more. Although the basic design hasn't changed, it just like added more details and responded to more questions. And then it slowly became clear that there was like this weird, it was a problem of belief, as you say, when you asked me about, what's the thing you believe that other people don't. There are all these strange like beliefs about side chains that actually would have prevented most of the people who were working at Blockstream at the time from ever even like finishing the project of inventing sidechains. So I kind of like had to do it myself, and I also with DriveChain we built like the software that does these two BIPs, BIP 300 and 301, that do the sidechain, that let Bitcoin Core send coins out to other pieces of software and get them back. But we also built the sidechain template so that you could see, you have an example of a sidechain. And in fact, we've already tweaked that template to be like a kind of, you have like a large block version of Bitcoin and also a Zcash version. So we're kind of testing all that right now. But yeah, that's part of what I've been working on.
Wait, hey, Paul, I'm really interested in some of that stuff you just said, because I did interview David from Mastercoin recently. I interviewed the RSK guys. I'm from Toronto, so I obviously know. I interviewed Anthony Diorio, the founder of Ethereum. So I know all these things really well. But curious, okay, first of all, RSK, is that not a sidechain?
Well, yeah, this is the problem. Is the word has kind of gone crazy, but if you did you see Sergio made a recent post, and he said that, see, this is the thing, is everyone when you get to the details, it's clear that it's aspiring to be a sidechain, but not yet a sidechain.
Right.
So in Sergio's most recent post about the different two-way peg the new two-way peg he had researched, he says that still the long-term goal is to actually put rootstock on Drive Chain, which is a sidechain secured completely by proof of work and by the mining process. So it's still aspirational. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And why?
But it's similarly to what Blockstream had always said about the federated peg, that was always supposed to be aspirational. That was like, we slapped this Band-Aid on. We'll just get this so we can get something going. But the goal was always to make it lose its reliance on these third parties, custodians.
Okay, this is super interesting. What is it about? First of all, are you, just so people know, because we didn't really do the intro, but like, do you consider yourself like a Bitcoin Core developer at one point, or are you, or do you consider yourself more like, I guess, yeah.
I would definitely say like I'm a bit. Sorry, I'm pouring myself some water.
It's all good.
I would say that I am a Bitcoin maximalist and a Bitcoin Core contributor. Certainly, people have like cited a lot of stuff I've written on my blog and passed it around. So for whatever that's worth, some of the other stuff on my blog is ignored and still is ripe for being stolen and passed around, years later. But I think that I don't know. I've been invited to speak at the scaling conferences. I was on the program committee at one point. So I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know.
Dude, so
Does it matter?
I have your blog open, okay, and I was reading
Yeah,
through it
sure.
before our call, and so I got to ask you a couple of for some TLDRs here. So, okay, first one: why proof of stake isn't cheaper and isn't better than proof of work? Okay, can you talk to me about this? Because I mean, if you look through my interviews, I mean, like 3 or 4 of them, I'm like trying to figure this out
No,
by
I'm
asking
trying to figure it out
people.
myself because if you
Talk
check
to me, man.
if
Talk
you
to me.
check the comment section on where I wrote, the one that got really famous was nothing is cheaper than proof of work. And that was in
Okay.
2015. And in the comment section, like people show up, Jay Kwan, Vlad Zamfir, and I thought that I'd convinced them that proof of stake is not cheaper than proof of work. So
Okay,
let's just say
talk to
off
me
the
why
bat.
it's not cheaper. Because I mean, that
Okay,
just sounds super
I'll explain.
counterintuitive,
I
and like,
know,
because
but
the narrative is
well,
not
let me
that.
change the intuition because okay, each block has a certain block reward. So let's just what you have to do is temporarily, for the sake of argument and simplicity, in fact, abstract away from the idea that Bitcoin has 21 million coins and Ethereum has some other thing. Just imagine they all had 21 million coins and that
Okay.
they're all 50 coins for 4 years and then it gets halved because that's a whole separate thing that has nothing to do with the point that I'm about to make at all. But it's confused. It'll be misleading to you if you get distracted by that detail. So,
Okay.
and
I'm with
see,
you.
and by Bitcoin and Ethereum, I really just mean like Bitcoin with proof of work and Bitcoin with proof of stake. Maybe that's easier. I don't know why, but because the Ethereum people are so crazy about proof of stake. So you have in each case, you have whatever it is, certain amount of coins coming in every block. So right now it's 6.25, but let's just say because it's easier with 50, and let's say there's 1 Bitcoin worth of fees because there usually is. So let's say there's 51 Bitcoin every block. This has nothing to do with the meat of the argument at all. This is just for simplicity. Just say every single block is 51 coins going to the miners.
I'm with you 100% so far.
Now, these coins, let's make it even simpler and say the exchange rate never changes. And it's always, let's just say it's always $10 per Bitcoin,
Okay, I'm with you.
What a horrible thought.
What's the
So
science project?
each
These are the
block,
fixed variable. Okay, I gotta go ahead.
51 Bitcoin, $510, right? So every block is worth $510. And who gets the block? Anyone can get it because anyone can join the mining process at any time. And even if they can't, anyone could join whatever it was that shortlisted them at some point. It's an open process. It's not like something where there are only 12 federal board of governors for the Federal Reserve, and it's capped at 12. You can't get more. You can't get 13. So the blocks are worth $510 every block, every 10 minutes. So what I say in the post is that this is a lot like a guy going up on the stage and auctioning off a briefcase with $510 in it. He says, I'm going to sell this to the highest bidder. Anyone can bid. Here it is. It's $510. So what do you think it's going to go for at the end of the day? It's going to go for like $509, They're going to bid. No one's going to bid 510. Certainly no one's going to bid 520. Right?
I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
So it has nothing to do with proof of work, proof of stake. It's just that's how valuable the blocks are. And so whatever they are, whatever the system is, people are going to fight over that until they can get it's the money coming in that is the problem. It's not the structure of proof of work, proof of stake.
It's the money coming in.
The money coming in. And yet that's the same in both scenarios. So it'll be the same with proof of stake. With proof of stake, you have to pledge coins. You have to lock up these coins.
Yeah.
But that has a cost. That's money that's not spent in the economy or invested in the economy. But worse than that, it's misleading because in proof of work, this money that's spent on electricity or whatever, on stuff, it's easy for a human being to think about, imagine in their mind a giant waterfall with giant turbines and the Bitcoin mining equipment humming really loudly, and little lights and things. But with Ethereum, it would just be staked, and so much more money would be staked than burned, because it'd be like the interest. So if the interest rate's like 5%, you burn $5 in proof of work world, you'd lock up $100 in the proof of stake world, 20 times as much. And in fact, a lot of people aren't using their coins for anything, but far from that being a sign of efficiency, all that means is that even more money would be locked up. That's all that money would be locked up and then some, because that's the equivalent of like free energy somewhere in the proof of work world. So what would happen if there's a giant waterfall with free energy and
One. Okay, we're back. Sorry, a little glitch there. So yeah, so you said what would happen if a waterfall had free energy, and I
in the
lost
proof
you
of
there.
work world, you just burn all that energy. So it's free, but because it's so cheap, you burn it. So this is equivalent to, in the proof of stake world, money that people aren't using for anything. Well, sure, they'll stake it in proof of stake, but this just means more money is staked. So the amount of money would be staked in the proof of stake world would be enormous. It would be an absurd amount of money. It would be much more than is spent in proof of work. It wouldn't be destroyed, but it would be staked. So whatever you could have used it to invest in something, you would not be able to.
Yeah, I see that. I see that point. Is that the main argument? Is that so that those funds could have been used for something else?
Yeah, it's not just the staked funds, though. I have no idea. It depends on the details of proof of stake. It's like if you're offline, you can be slashed. So it's like, will people compete on denial of service attacking each other, or will they compete on building software that stops them from being, or hardware that stops them from being denial of service attacked? The real problem is the money coming in. If that much money is coming in, that means you have a big incentive to collect the money and to be the only one collecting that money. You want to kick everyone else off, and that means you have an incentive to do all this stuff. If it's a huge amount of money, I mean, think about how much the number actually are in Bitcoin. Where, I mean, how much is it? It's like 7 or 8 Bitcoin, $20,000 a coin. So already this is like 160,000. So it's like, that's just, and then 1,000 blocks every week. So it's like hundreds of millions of dollars per week. Billions of dollars per year. So that's all yours if you can just knock everyone else on the network off, or if you can just give yourself a 1% advantage. It's like $100 million. So whatever it is, people will be looking for a way, and that is the real reason. But this is just one example that I just want to show that locking up money does have some cost. The fact that you can't deploy money in the economy, that is a cost. Probably more so than just some stupid waterfall that you're going to run a little bit more water through the turbines than over the top. But I don't know. The point is, this isn't like the role of the economist isn't to like actually chart it all out. It's just this equilibrium thing. There's a certain amount of money is coming in. So that's how much money will be wasted in quotes. See, that's $510 comes in. The auctioneer auctions it off. The person pays $509. $509 is wasted. It shouldn't be different in proof of stake. Everyone's attempt to convince me that it will be different, I haven't been convinced. So that's hence these posts. So that's why it won't be cheaper. As far as it not being better, there are a lot of problems with proof of stake. At a certain point, people have just stopped arguing. I think, though, in a way, the results speak for themselves, though, because proof of stake has been just 3 months away in Ethereum since like 2015. And in fact, I remember at Satoshi Roundtable 3, right? So what was that? What would that have been? Like 2017, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And there was a guy there that was at. And this guy, we were in a big group. This guy was talking about the greatness of proof of stake and the greatness of Ethereum, and he was so convinced. He literally offered to buy me a ticket to fly to Paris in April for this proof of stake unveiling, because this was like in late January. He He was so convinced, and he was like, and you can watch as we turn on proof of stake. And he was just brimming with confidence. And I told him, well, I've been hearing this for a long time. I've been hearing this for years. For years, people have said it's 3 months away. And all of those people have been just as confident as you. And don't you realize that? And he said, yes, I realize that I sound exactly like those other people, but this time it's for real. And that was April 2017, but still no proof of stake, right? So it's constantly delayed.
I kind of even lost track, to be honest. But did something? So Ethereum 2.0 was unveiled, right, recently?
Yeah, but isn't that just a coupon for? It doesn't do anything. It's just a coupon for the next when Ethereum 2.0 comes out, you can claim it.
Interesting. So they got nothing to do with proof of stake. They haven't even gotten closer.
They get closer every time. I don't know.
What is it fundamentally that why they're not able to solve this problem?
Well, I don't know. I think they may be making progress towards solving it. I just think the results speak for themselves of how.
Is it a worthy problem to solve?
It's not cheaper. That's my point. The whole point was it was supposed to be cheaper. I'm supposed to avoid this cost, but the cost is not a function of the fact that it's burning energy. The cost is a shadow of really what's happening, which is the problem that the blocks are valuable. Since they're valuable, people fight over them, and that fighting is the wasted energy. And the good idea from Satoshi was to not only make it so that fighting contributed to something, which in this case is denial of service prevention. When you get a block header, you can check immediately. SPV mode also, that millions of people use today. You can check all the block headers in like half a second. It's 4 megabytes per year. You can check that you're on the highest work chain. So, but when you get a new header, you can check the header instantly. Just take the hash. The hash has the right number of zeros or the right value. You can check immediately. You just check 80 bytes. Then you know whether or not the person is a valid peer if they're a good guy. So not only does it do that, but for him to make it cumulative proof of work. Now every new link in the chain makes the entire chain more secure. That was a good idea. There's no real reason to, I think the other thing is people were concerned about the 51% attack. So there was a hope, like back in 2010 or something, if you go ancient Bitcoin talk post hunting, you can find some stuff about proof of stake. People thought, oh, this will be great. It's immune to the 51% attack and it doesn't waste any electricity. Like, this is the best idea ever. But I think a lot of the stuff about the 51% attack is also just a lack of confidence in Bitcoin and maybe even in like freedom or something, or whatever you want to call it as well, because it's designed to be a process to keep everyone in line. And the whole 51% attack thing is like, it's like solving the wrong problem. The 51% attack assumes that you somehow know what's true in advance, and you can it's only a matter of convincing the other people that your way is the best. But the hash rate thing, the heaviest chain rule, that is this method for resolving disputes when like different parts of the world find blocks at different times or disagree over what should be in a block. Or some people say that block is censoring me, and other people say no, it's not, and other people say you suck or whatever. So it's a process for like finding the truth. Whereas I think a lot of people just think in their mind, they think, well, what if this happened? And that's not what I want. How can I get everyone to do what I want? So it's kind of an anti-liberty thing to even worry about the 51% attack, but to some small extent, not to a big extent. But this was all the stuff that was driving people towards proof of stake in the past. But I think it absolutely is not. If you're smart enough to work on something like this, you should do something else. Especially there's merge mining. You get all of Bitcoin's hash rate for free. It's silly.
Hey, one more thing. Why smart contracts are bad for Bitcoin? Curious if you can kind of help give the TLDR on that one. I apologize. I should have read it before, but I'm definitely going to read it after this. But again, okay, my kind of layman's whatever term in terms of what I thought it was that, well, what were the big criticisms? One was it was an attack vector potentially. I think it would bloat the block sizes or something. I mean, there was a couple of different things that I don't know that were said to me back in the day before Ethereum became because I literally talked to Vitalik and he was like, look, we're going to do smart contracts on our own blockchain and Bitcoin core developers will never allow it. And that was kind of their thing, right? So but curious why you're saying why smart contracts are bad for Bitcoin, but then is that eventually like getting to the point that, well, something like drive chain or side chains should be used?
Well, it's a question of, yeah, people should be able to try out their own thing. It's kind of annoying because with drive chain, it's kind of like just like the free market, and it just says these pieces of software should compete. And it shouldn't matter my opinion on what should or shouldn't be done. So you see what I mean? If I were an entrepreneur, I would implicitly have a lot of theories about how a business should be run. There's no getting around it. So I say, I think you should open on time. I think you should have a customer service number, whatever. I think you should sell goods that are really expensive on purpose so that only rich people buy them and it becomes trendy. You can have all these theories when you start a business. That's different from saying, with drive chain is like saying there shouldn't be a monopoly. It shouldn't just be Bitcoin Core or, the desolate wasteland of competing with Bitcoin Core, starting your own altcoin or whatever. So that's a different thing. It depends. So I think oracles are good, but smart contracts are kind of a kind of sad imitation of oracles. That is, really, oracles are the real smart contracts. That's the really important blog post. And some smart contracts are set up so that they interfere with other smart contracts, and it's not good for it to be general purpose, actually, because that eliminates classes of activity that are possible. So it's kind of like if you had a world where anyone could steal your name, or your brand.
Sorry, but
yeah, I
a
can
little bit
hear
of
some
background
people
noise there. Yeah, I'll just
People
mute my side.
Some people are having fun. Okay. What was I saying? Imagine that. So in the past, cattle ranchers, the word brand in business, it actually comes from branding. I don't know if it's cattle or whatever, but it's branding livestock. They would literally brand them with, a literal brand. And then, because then they'd go out and like graze, and then you have to get them back. So you let them out into like the world where you couldn't have, there was some part of it that was uncontrolled. They'd go up to graze in the pasture, and then they get them back. And then you had to make sure that you only took back the ones that were yours. So there were all these rules about you can't take, someone owns a certain brand, like a certain piece of information. Because you couldn't steal, you couldn't say, oh, this is my brand. There had to be some kind of, if there was a dispute, oh, this brand is mine, this is mine. You had to like go and register them somewhere. So in that world, if you couldn't do the brand registration technology, then it would be impossible to have property rights over cattle in that particular way. So sometimes if there's too much freedom, it only means that complexity isn't possible. And so there's a limit to how much, whatever, free enterprise you can even have.
I mean, one thing that's caught, I think a lot of people's attention is, have you heard of, what is it called? Oh my God, Uniswap?
Yes.
Have you heard of these guys?
I don't know about it though.
Well, no, I guess what I'm getting at though is that, like, so the Uno Coin, the company I started in 2012, were like a centralized exchange. I'm not gonna lie, I've thought really deeply about building a decentralized exchange, and you know what I mean? Like, I shared with you before our call about this whole notion of what happened in India. I won't go into it, but I mean, yeah, I think about like, how can the world function without, a centralized entity a lot. And so Uniswap, to me, kind of, I mean, they're doing more volume than, I don't know, and some days more than Coinbase, more than Binance. So this project, like Ethereum, that I've been super critical of, many have been critical of, in my eyes, in some like ICOs, yeah, I get it, super scammy, try to stay away from as much of it as possible. But something like Uniswap, where they're just enabling like, peer-to-peer trades, seems like a legitimate kind of, cause. And I guess where I'm going with this is that I know some people have kind of forked it to build it on RSK. But I wonder, what's kind of held me back is that like it would be kind of weird to build a Bitcoin, decentralized exchange on top of Ethereum, given
Yeah.
that I'm a Bitcoiner as well, and
I
I see all
know.
these like holes in
See,
it.
isn't that
So
horrible? Yeah.
so how does one address
Isn't
that
life
problem?
terrible? I thought this was supposed to be about freedom. I thought, what happened to Bitcoin user not affected? What happened to just, you know, um, like doing whatever you want? But now you have to like conform to this weird culture. Um, the there is a delusion, I think, that I mean, it is mostly true that the altcoin technology is just terrible, and it's not even worth copying and stealing.
Mm,
But that's not completely true. I mean, as I was saying, so one of the things, Mastercoin and Counterparty, right? The ICOs
I
were
know
total
both. Yeah.
scams. They were
Hmm.
total scams, but they were ahead. That would have been on Bitcoin if there was some kind of parallel future where that could have been healthily integrated
True.
into Bitcoin. That
True.
was all on Bitcoin first. Now, the other thing though is what are now, I guess, the non-fungible tokens or whatever you want to call them, the NFTs. The stuff that's just funny, like the Spells of Genesis. Remember the Rare Pepe, like all
Of
this weird
course.
like screwball stuff. Um, and that CryptoKitties on Ethereum. So, um, people like that kind of stuff. That's just like digital art. That's like fun. That's like a pure internet thing.
Yeah.
That's like you think of like Keyboard Cat, or you think of like whatever, like early YouTube videos, where it's just people just having fun, marquee tags, in HTML. Like it's just people having fun on the internet. Um, that was so there was all this stuff that was tried. A lot of it was bad, but some of it is good. And there's, I think, increasingly there's just this delusion in Bitcoin that all the other stuff in all the other coins can be ignored. And there's a lot of great stuff. Like I like David Vorik's SIA project. You just type in 12 words and it just can regenerate your hard drive. It's like that storage idea, the like bit hard drive idea. So it's like pay people to store all your files. You can get them all back from the blockchain. But there's, and then there's like the Zcash stuff, like the Monero Zcash stuff, like other stuff for people who want to mix their coins so that they don't have to just do. Right now, you're like stuck with CoinJoin or like Whirlpool. You coin join with like 5 people. You have to pay a transaction fee every time, layer 1 transaction fee. It could be easily Sybiled. You have to pay the Whirlpool fee if you use Samurai. Whirlpool. That's great. I mean, everyone knows that you're doing it. Everyone can see on the blockchain. That's a coin join. Stuff like what Monero and Zcash are doing is better than that. If they're, the people talk about liquidity, they say not a lot of people are using XYZ, so it's worse. But the technique is either better or worse, and then you get all of the users. If it was all smooth, it would get the users, and it would get the liquidity problem is that's a chicken and egg problem. So there's other great stuff, yeah, a lot of the stuff, like I was just talking with my other friend, like I was saying, with enough trial and error, Ethereum will eventually create good stuff, unfortunately. And that's true of anything with trial and error. And he said there was not enough trial and error. But eventually what I brought up was that evolution created human beings and everything that we built, symphonies and everything, just from trial and error on just like some little molecules. So trial and error is very strong. And people in Bitcoin, there's this kind of, this kind of cult has taken over Bitcoin. It just says it's preordained for victory, and whatever it was, Satoshi's design is the absolute best, and everything else is a corruption of the design. And that is kind of what sort of prevents people from being interested in drive chain, because drive chain says, hey, what about you could have a big block side chain? And people say, well, big blocks suck. How dare you even suggest that? That's just, those are the unpeople who do that. But meanwhile, Roger Ver has like a nice wallet that low fees, and it's like good experience. So the point of drive chain is that, similar to prediction markets, it's kind of a utopian thing. In my brain, it's like in the drive chain world, you know, no, none of the Bitcoiners hate hate Bitcoin. Excuse me, hate Vitalik or something. Is what I'm trying to say. Is they're like, well, we have this weird guy Vitalik, but he's got this crazy Ethereum project that's kind of cool. They're all shills for Ethereum because Ethereum uses the 21 million Bitcoin coin limit, and there's no second token. There's no altcoin. Would never have been invented like that. You know what I mean? And people would mix their coins on Zcash. They'd send their Bitcoin to Zcash as a sidechain. Zcash wouldn't be its own coin. They'd send it there and then mix the coins over there, where they get super ZK snark mixing, and then they'd send them back. Unilateral mixing with every single person in the Zcash pool with just like 2 transactions instead of Whirlpool where you mix with like 4 other people, and you have to do it every time, over and over again. And yeah, there's all this other stuff. They have David Vork's thing isn't its own altcoin. It's with Bitcoin. All these things are Bitcoin projects. So everyone is on a team. Everyone's actually supporting each other. Everyone's shilling. Someone like whatever, like Pierre Rochard, Dan Held, they would be like shilling Ethereum. It would be a topsy-turvy world where, and vice versa, because demand for Ethereum would be going into Bitcoin, and the public right now, I think, is sort of kind of baffled by crypto. They're just like, what is going on? They don't know what to do. And they're like, I'm going to wait until they figure this out before I invest. But in the drive chain world, it's unified. There's just the only one thing to buy. There's lots of software to try out, but there's only one unit, the Bitcoin, and there's only one lower thing to settle to. There's one small block to settle to, and then there's Roger Ver is using the large block sidechain, and then no one has a problem with it, the same way they have this vitriolic hatred of Bitcoin Cash. So the drive chain world is like a totally different world, very much like the prediction markets. Well, everyone should just want to live in my head where everything is great. Everything is great in here.
Well, why isn't drive chain okay? Wait, so is drive chain where you want it to be, or are there still some things that the core developers need to do to kind of enable the full vision of it?
It is a soft fork, so it's like SegWit where it has to be activated. But we haven't quite finished it. I keep tinkering with it, and I'm kind of lazy about it, and I'm kind of a perfectionist about it. But you can go and try out. We have testnet software, so anyone can download it and check it out. It's great. You go to drivechain.info, and it's right there. You can find the downloads page. The link is right at the top.
But is it kind of like a Turing complete environment? Is it like that?
Turing completeness is a phrase that has been like beaten to death by this community, and I don't know if we should continue using it or not. But you can send the coins to any piece of software, so just passively, it is universal. It can simulate any altcoin, and so since it can simulate Ethereum, it has access to Turing complete scripts or Turing complete anything.
Okay, and so the SegWit comment about how it needs to be soft fork. So, what like is that something? I mean, but it seems like is there hostility in doing that, or is it kind of like obvious now? Like, are people like, okay, well, we would need to do this?
I honestly think people are baffled by it. I think, there's a lot of PTSD from the last soft fork. You can see even with something like Taproot that's very, very popular among the elite developer communities, it's like the slowest thing possible. In fact, I remember it was Sushi Roundtable 5, maybe. I get them all confused. But I think it was maybe at least 20. It may have been 2018. I think it was 2019 though. I'm gonna say they said by the summer. Someone there told me confidently. Said by the summer it will be activated via BIP9. But they were wrong about that. Obviously, we're blown way past summer 2019, and still nothing in sight. And still, what people propose is some of these proposals have an activation timeline that is like 3 years long or something ridiculous. You've seen some of these, right? Where it's like we try BIP9, then it like stalls, and then it activates via BIP8 like after 12 months after that. It's like 2023 we'll have Taproot. So I'm not sure. Maybe the protocol has become ossified faster than anyone thought. But what I think it is just people are baffled by it. When people do critique it, it's clear that they have no idea what it does or how it works, which is why I've worked very hard to help make the GUI better. So if you use the testnet software, it should at least be possible. Ideally, it'd be, I don't know, I try to make it ideally in a certain way. I think it's easier for people to figure out exactly what's happening, but that's for them to judge and not me. But certainly when you go and you like make a deposit, you see the deposit to the sidechain. When you make the withdrawal, you see it shows up in like a little queue. It shows up in a little thing. Those little boxes with question marks, you can like click on them, and then this explanation written by me will show up and explain what is going on. So I tried to work on that and I continue to try, present tense, because that's what I'm working on, is making this as a kind of demonstration. And then I think then people will be in a better position to look at it. And then, I plan on making like a little like video, like one of those little videos to because all the videos I currently make were to address expert audience. So criticisms from Peter Todd, Greg Maxwell, whatever, people like that, Matt Corallo, whatever. So that's like the intended audience for like stuff like that, and it's like extremely theoretical and weird. I have to make like the little bit, like, you remember that video that Peter Todd made back in the day, the Keep Bitcoin Free, and it had like the dorky little xylophone, and it was but it was a great video. But it was
I don't think I saw it. I interviewed.
Well,
you mentioned it. Yeah.
I did. I saw it. It's an immensely controversial video, but
Hmm.
it was a pretty good video. It's like short. Mine won't be as good as that. It'll be like a little. But I have to make the point is I have to make like a video for a more general audience. Although it's funny, I remember seeing the video because Peter Todd spoke. I think it was like 2013. It's like this, like in the Javits Center in like New York City or something, and every single person in the room, including me, was just baffled, just totally baffled. Couldn't understand what he was even talking about with this block size debate. Like, I had no idea what he was talking about. I don't think anyone had any idea. This was like a long time ago.
Okay, well, how can people help though? Like normal people, or not normal people, but let's say some programmer dude is like thinking, and for in my case, like I said, like I'm not gonna lie, like I think a lot about building, like just decentral, whether it's like P2P platforms, right? Given like P2P, like better versions of local Bitcoins, or like things like that really, I think it's like 0.5% of the world right now maybe has Bitcoin. And banking can sometimes be a big challenge. And so we've seen how that can be obviously devastating. And so I think a lot about like, how do you make it so that, even in the face of tyranny, we're able to commerce between one another. I think that is a very noble cause. But I also don't like the idea of building highly, I guess what's the word, subversive, technology on like a server that sits in my house or something. Like I'd rather, think about building stuff like that on something like Bitcoin. But again, I guess, but if the Bitcoin community isn't welcoming of that, and I can respect that too, because like, Bitcoin wants to do one thing really well. It always struck me as like side chains and like drive chain as like a very technologically responsible way of fostering innovation and simultaneously preserving the core benefits of
that
Bitcoin.
Was the real, when drive chain really got going, it was like 2016. The block size debate was going crazy. The price of Ethereum was going crazy. People in Bitcoin were like depressed. This is what they called the long sideways or whatever, from like 2014 to like 2017. But was in particular, what was absurd about it was explicitly with all sidechain designs are known to me that are not like some secret mandatory hard fork. This is like technical and weird, but the point is basically with sidechains, you don't want the full node to be responsible for the sidechain. So you have to ignore some stuff over there, but you can't ignore everything because then it just becomes an altcoin. So the middle ground was this SPV proof concept. And so the sidechain only has SPV security, but on it you can do whatever you want. And it just became absurd because the small block people hated SPV security. They hated it. And the large block people loved it. They were just in love with it. Every single time if you brought up anything on Twitter, they'd say, blah, blah, blah. The longest chain will never contain that because someone will raise the alarm. It's super easy to identify if a block is bad or if a transaction is bad. They loved it. They loved SPV. So it was the perfect thing because with sidechains, the large block people could have their own SPV sidechain, and it would never bother the main chain at all. The main chain could stay small block.
And do you know much about Liquid? Do you know much about Liquid?
Yes, I do.
Just thoughts. Isn't that a sidechain? I'm probably like, so
That's,
isn't it supposed to be, or was it?
No, as I said, it's aspirational. They say, I have another post on DriveChain. I can send it to you. The Drive chain has its own blog. And then I said, is Liquid a real sidechain? Question mark. Greg Maxwell weighs in. And that one's short. But Liquid is like a custodial multi-signature wallet that holds BTC, but it's also this other thing that has a federation of servers that has its own kind of like counterparty-like thing. Now, Bitcoins go in and they can come back out. But when they come out, it's only because X number of people in the multi-sig agree that they can come out. There's a little bit more to it than that, but the reason that it's not what was originally envisioned is that it doesn't solve the problem of altcoins. It's not can Roger Ver use Liquid to create a large block version of Bitcoin Core, and then because he would have done that and send coins there, and then Bitcoin.com would be shilling that thing. No, but Liquid is custodial. That's the other thing too. Is there's this group of people who own the coins. And those, that's a list of names and addresses, that's no different than what the stuff that Bitcoiners used to laugh at, like when Dan Larimer and Vitalik, they would do stuff like that, where they'd say, well, like delegated proof of stake was like that, that was like, well, the couple people have servers, but it's not a big deal because the servers will only be used if XYZ happens. That's just a quick hack that they threw together because they thought they would later do the real sidechain stuff, or what Greg Maxwell says, the true two-way peg. So there's a video, he clearly refers to the true two-way peg in contrast to Liquid. Liquid is only this temporary sort of stopgap. It's not, and you can see why. You can't use it. How can you use Liquid to send, how can I use Liquid to make turn complete? How can I use it to make Z address transactions like with ZK Snarks from Zcash? How can I use it to do the prediction market thing that I want to do? If I could, I would have just done that. I wouldn't have needed to do it with DriveChain. The only reason I bothered with DriveChain at all in the first place was because I was working on this prediction markets idea. If I could use Liquid for that, I would have done that.
Yeah,
you know that because you know that you can't use Liquid for these other things. And when you put it into Liquid, it is owned by those other people. It's no different than if you had Mt. Gox and Mt. Gox had a server that was secured with multiple like SSH keys or something.
Hey, Paul, have you looked at Solana at all? Just curious if you heard about these guys.
Yeah, but I can't quite remember it. You have to refresh my memory. I have looked at it.
They're out of, what's that chip? Qualcomm. It's like, I don't know, a whole bunch of guys out of Qualcomm. It's like proof of history, proof of I don't even know. It's anyways. But I have a question. So given that problem statement that I was mentioning earlier, is like building, decentralized applications, let's say, within the exchange space, whether it be fiat to crypto, whether it be crypto to crypto, if someone were to embark on that, like today, what would be their path to, or optimal path towards like building something, you know what I mean? Like, is it Ethereum then at the end of the day, just because of all these like the facts that you don't, huh?
Yeah, I empathize with it. I mean, it's annoying because there has been, in the drive to safeguard Bitcoin Core from this corruption, there has been like a lot of suppression of creativity, So if you want to just try something that's considered fun on Ethereum, but it's considered like a nasty attack in Bitcoin, you're not supposed to try until you're supposed to like be an apprentice for 7 years at Chain Code and supposed to whip yourself and live as a monk for 40 years. And then only after meditating on the code and reciting Satoshi's white paper backwards at the full moon can you like open a pull request that's not for like a unit test or something. But so it's hard if you want to do something. One weird thing that I wanted to do in my head that I think is great that people should do is I might even try to do it myself or something. I think there should be something in the GUI, the Bitcoin GUI for HTLCs, because you could do the coin swap thing just by yourself in the software. You just need to make a little thing that says, I send Bitcoin to this. It's locked to this hash, or it comes back to me after a certain amount of time. And if you just built that, then all you need to do is have someone else, Ethereum, Litecoin, just kind of like copy it and put it into their GUI. And then people could just meet like on Reddit or whatever, anywhere, IRC, whatever it is, wherever it is people meet. And they could just say, I'll trade you, 5 Litecoin for whatever, a tenth of a Bitcoin. And then you could just do it in the software and you'd have a cool little GUI. And you'd lock it to the same hash. So one person would go first, and then the other person would go second, and then you could just complete the trade. So then you have basically shapeshift or side shift, or a lot of what maybe Coinbase does. I have no idea the figures, but the point is you could do it on your own, and then maybe that would be something Jeffrey Brito or whatever would say to Congress. They'd say, look, hey, they already do this. It has nothing. So that's why you have to allow shapeshift or whatever. You know what I mean? And then from there, it's actually pretty close, because if you have something like Tether, and I'm very skeptical of Tether. The whole time I've been wondering, like, when is the Tether thing gonna come to some kind of bad end? But so far to them, they've done okay. But the point is, if you just have something like Tether
is counterparty, right?
I think they've later moved it onto everything. They moved it. It's on Ethereum.
Yeah.
It was on Counterparty via like Mastercoin or something. And I think it was Mastercoin protocol, and then it's on Ethereum, and it's even on Bitcoin Cash. So it's like it's kind of moved around, which is probably smart. But it's on all those things at once. And the issue is, if something like that exists, or even if it's like Amazon gift cards or something. Just something that's a cash-like. If you could just HTLC with that somehow, If somehow you could get that to do HTLC, then you have the decentralized exchange, and that's it. It's just another little tab in Bitcoin Core or in Electrum or whatever your own wallet that you make.
You're talking about like a crypto to crypto still, or are you talking about like the local Bitcoins?
For Tether, it would still be crypto to crypto if Tether is considered a crypto.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But then you see, it's just specialization. So that's all from the comfort of your own home, possibly behind VPN or Tor or whatever. Okay, so that's great. And then all you need is that last link of converting US dollars to Tether. But and back. But some specialists could do that. You see, if you would need it, as long as it were possible, you wouldn't necessarily need to do it. You would just say, I'm going to keep this in Tether because it works for me. And then only a specialist would have to actually swap them back and forth. But I was saying with the Amazon gift cards, maybe you could like make it even further.
Paul, we kind of just like riffed on all these like super, I'd say relevant, interesting, crazy ideas, but we didn't really, we're kind of at the end of our time. We didn't really cover any of your story. But we did cover your projects a little bit. I was going to say, dude, if you're down, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm not going to lie. It did make my brain hurt a little bit just because you made me think, like, you know, if you had like a little processing meter on my brain, it was like it was at 90, it was at like red the whole time. Normally I'm a lot more like, just like, okay, I got this because I got a formula, but you took me out of that. It's all good. I like that. I like that. Okay. So dude, I was going to say, I'm down to do a follow up, you know, and do more of a deep dive on your story if you're even interested.
Yeah, sure.
I'm also down to do, you know, like a private meeting as well, because I'd love to chat with you further about some of these ideas. But where do people find out about you, you know, the great work you've been doing? And like, is it Twitter? Is it like is there a
I'm on
website that you?
Twitter. I'm Truthcoin on Twitter. TruthCoin. This is my name is very difficult to spell, but I think if you want to learn the sites, all the websites link to each other. So I have truthcoin.info is my blog. BitcoinHivemind.com is for
And Truthcoin is your ICO, right? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's just a blog.
It's a blog. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Unocoin, we get that all the time, so it's okay.
And
Yeah.
drivechain.info. So, but those
Drivechain.info.
the
Okay,
three
awesome.
sites, they all link to each other, so you
Sweet.
can find them.
And then on Twitter, you're at Truthcoin, right?
That's right.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I know, like I said, yeah, if you want, like, we can do another follow-up some other time. With that said, any last words, or should we bring this one to an end?
No last words from me.
No last words.
Only first
Why?
words.
Wise words of wisdom? No. All right, Paul. I think you've already hit us up with enough of those. Okay, I'm gonna kill this.